Giga Texas is 83% done, and they're running out of places to build stuff. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. A quick thanks to the newest Patreon, Legend of Owls, at the cool level. Very cool. And please just smack the like button early so others might actually get to see this video, since YouTube is kind of the worst. What I said last week remains true. The site is really close to running out of work to do, at least on the main Emerald footprint and at least on the outside. Well, there's a ton of cars in the parking lot, the work inside is going on, but we're pretty much down to the central corridor on the outside. Let's start with this week's graph and a work update. The site prep didn't change this week, likely due to the torrential rains making the ground unworkable. The foundations increased by the same amount, which is to say, not at all. We're in the home stretch here, and we need to see them putting up big numbers, but when the clouds open, there's only so much you can do. Digging for new footings is underway, but it hasn't reached the point of having concrete poured just yet, so it isn't counted. The framing also didn't change, yet again, since the few available footings were still curing. But on Monday of this week, as in yesterday, we got to see the first steel columns erected, and pretty quickly at that, based on the visible difference between the various drone pilots just a few hours apart. We'll see some progress on this front this week. The site's overall progress ticked up a tad less than usual, resulting in the biggest timeline slip we've seen in a while, but we'll get to that in a bit. The roofing ticked up as more final layers were installed, and this is still likely undercounted by a bit, but the math just gives it half weighting when it first goes on, and the second half is tracked along with the completion of the interior spaces over the 17 weeks that those are counted. The interior completion had its strongest week ever by the slimmest possible margin, with a decent number of walls added this week that won't start counting until next week. Next week's interior bump should be the biggest one yet, though it's still going to barely move the needle since it only counts as a fraction of the 20% of the entire progress that we count. So we're at the point where we can make some pretty sound assumptions about the actual completion. And last week I started showing what the completion is likely to look like over the remaining weeks and months. Well, this week got a bit long on content, so I'll pick up that series again next week, but it's pretty interesting to see the way the long tail winds down. So let's take a look at the sitemap, slightly sped up this week, and roll it back to December 14th when it first launched and go through it, as we do, week by week. To understand the sitemap, this is the overall footprint of the main building. The orange is the footings, with the darker orange being heavier footings. The gray is the framing work, with the darker gray indicating roof sections. In blue, you see the finished interior closed-off space, with darker blue indicating more floors. Yes, we track the floors. So the darker the blue, the more floors that there are. The black lines indicate a firewall or expansion joint, with the heavier black lines indicating a concrete wall. And as a reminder, this only tracks the main Emerald footprint, not any of the other projects around the site, since we haven't seen permits and we don't know what their eventual size and scope will be. Mad thanks to Jeff Roberts for allowing use of his amazing drone footage. So here it is, and here you go. As of October 4th, Giga Texas, the future birthplace of Yo Cybertruck, is 83% done and will be complete for lack of a better word, in a total of 529 days from groundbreaking on or about December 31st of this very year. It will actually be done in some capacity before then, and also not completely done until sometime after then, but we're at least in the right ballpark. It's still a mostly two-floor structure, as you can see, with just over 8.6 million square feet framed up, which is about 802,000 square meters, a figure that won't increase until next week when we can finally count the new framing in the central corridor. While it may feel like this tracker is winding down, it just isn't likely. Construction is probably about to begin on buildings in other parts of the site. If not next week, then maybe next month. And those will be tracked as well. Thanks to those of you who joined any of the 4 live streams last week where we talked about the record-breaking production numbers. If you weren't able to catch any of them, I missed on my projections by just 1.2%, which is a little bit better than the 8+% miss by the Wall Street analysts and closer to the actual mark than anyone I was able to find before they were published. Yeah, there were some randos who popped up after the fact with 20/20 hindsight, but it doesn't count if you don't publish it in advance, and preferably while showing you math. This was only my 4th projection, but it was also my 4th time beating the Wall Street estimates. And a heads up that there will be another live stream this coming Friday at 8 p.m. as well. Subscribe if you haven't already to get notified. Follow me on Twitter at 4K Podcast and smack of the thummy thing in either direction if you made it this far. So, what did I miss or misunderstand? Leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. And as always, my friends, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I simply cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the dusty side of the Rio Grande. And a quick thank you to my Patreons who get early access, a bonus content, an ad-free experience, and to help keep the channel running for as little as $1 a month. I move this shout out to the end as a thank you to all of you for your generosity and support, which helps me avoid having to pander to YouTube's dreaded and painful algorithm. And I thank you guys so much.